On June 1st, 1987, a 43-year-old man and a 16-year-old girl would venture to the Sierra Nevada mountain range to hunt Bigfoot. This girl's name was Theresa Bier, and she would never be seen or heard from again. Theresa Bier was born April 16, 1971 in Fresno, California, to Vietnam War veteran David Bier and his wife Shirley. They both suffered from mental illnesses. Before Teresa was even 3 years old, her mom would beat her to the point that she had multiple broken ribs, and there was even an instance where Teresa's mom took her leg and wrapped it in the bar of the baby crib and twisted it until you could hear it snap. Social services would eventually intervene and place Teresa in foster care with a member of the local church named Sylvia Pierce. Teresa's stay with Sylvia would last 3 years and be a relatively healthy environment for Teresa. However, this would not be permanent. Upon losing custody of Teresa to social services, her father David and her mother Shirley would file for divorce. David would later remarry Margie Richmond, who had once been married to Shirley's brother John. Margie already had daughters of her own, which would lead to David wanting his daughters back. David would petition to the court to regain custody of Teresa, and unfortunately, the court would rule in his favor, and Teresa would have to leave her life with Sylvia and move to Southern California with her father, which proved to be a terrible experience for Teresa, leaving her malnourished and withdrawn. There are claims that Margie, who worked as a janitor, would lock the fridge at their house while she was gone, forcing Teresa to starve most days and be left in a general state of neglect. Sometime later, Teresa's great-grandma on her mom's side would agree to let Teresa stay with her back in Fresno, California. Teresa's uncle John Richmond, Margie's former husband, along with his wife and 2 young boys, would also be living with them. The apartment they lived in was dirty, unkept, and Teresa would attempt to distance herself by staying in her room. But it wouldn't matter. John would sexually assault Teresa and allow his friends to do the same. He would also force her to miss school so she could babysit his 2 boys, ultimately leading to her falling behind in class and being placed in special education. Now in walks a man named Russel Welch. Russel Welch is a 43-year-old meth addict who is obsessed with finding Bigfoot to the point where he would take people up into the Sierra Nevada mountains to hunt Bigfoot alongside him. One instance involved Russell taking a young girl named Michelle and her 2 friends to the mountains. Michelle would claim that she was drugged to the point that she thought she was going to die, but her 2 friends presumably got her to safety. It is not known how Russell and Teresa came to be acquainted. They weren't related. Russell was not a friend of the family or even very well known by the family. But on June 1st, 1987, when Teresa was only 16 years old, Teresa was presumably getting ready to go to school where she was nearing the end of her freshman year, and Russell Welch would be the one taking her. However, she would not be making it to the school today. Instead, her and Russell would be headed off to the mountains to hunt Bigfoot. Nobody outside of Teresa and Russell knew of these plans. So by early afternoon, the school would call Teresa's Uncle John to alert him of her absence. John, who would later admit to lying so he could handle it on his own, told the school that she was homesick. By 9:30 p.m., when Teresa had still not returned home, John would finally then call and file a missing persons report. Days later, on June 5th, a woman by the name of Dorothy Davis, who was a friend of Russell's and also lived very close to the entrance of the forest, claimed that Russell showed up unannounced, appeared to be extremely disheveled, upset, and clearly high, and told her about a girl he had to leave up in the mountains after a satanic group had stumbled upon them, took control of the girl, and physically changed her into, quote, something all white looking. Information would eventually get back to Teresa's Uncle John, and he would receive threatening phone calls telling John to tell police that Russell did in fact drop her off at school that morning and that she had left after. 2 days later, Russell would finally be arrested and taken in for questioning. Russell said that on June 1st, when him and Teresa got to the forest, she was promptly and forcibly taken by a Bigfoot. He claimed he did not try to help her as he thought she would be happier with the group of Bigfoot as they are to be, quote, highly intelligent beings. Police would search the area by foot and by helicopter. They found a blue shirt belonging to Russell that had drugs in the front pocket, but their searches would ultimately come up empty-handed. A relative of Russell would come forward to police and say that Russell had told him about a giant rock where a girl would need to be tied up and sacrificed to Satan. But nothing would come of this either. Russell was offered a deal if he confessed and showed police where the body of Teresa was, but he refused and stuck to his claims of her being taken by a Bigfoot. Russell would ultimately be charged with kidnapping, with charges being dropped in October of 1987 due to lack of evidence. Russell would live to be 54 and died in 1998 due to coronary artery disease, and stuck to his claims of the Bigfoot taking Teresa till the day he died. Teresa was 5 feet 5 inches tall, 110 pounds, had brown hair, hazel eyes, upper front protruding teeth, still had the scars on her leg from when her mom broke it on the baby crib, and she was last seen wearing a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and lace sandals at the time of her disappearance. Teresa is still considered missing to this day and would be 36 years old.
Daily Cryptid.